Hey everyone, I'm Sison, and today we're taking a look at Sony's 35mm F1.4 GM lens. Currently at the Bay Run. I just finished my jog and I thought I'd go for a little walk just to chill out and just to, I guess, gather my thoughts on this 35mm F1.4. Now, you might be thinking, yes, there's a Zeiss version that's out already, so what's the point? This one is on a different level. It does offer a lot more in terms of focusing speed, image quality, features, all of that, which I'll touch on in the video, but 35mm is pretty much a classic focal length. A lot of people use it for different types of applications, from street, travel, food like myself, and portraits. There's a lot of things that you can do with this lens, and granted, it's not too big, not too heavy to bring around with you, which is what I'm doing right now on this little walk of mine. But I'm going to give you a tour of the lens, show you its features, show you its performance and image quality, and of course, let you know what I personally think of it. So stay tuned. Alright, so here is what the lens actually looks like. As you can see, it is a well-featured lens with switches, buttons, and the aperturing, which is nice to have for anyone that prefers using changing the aperture on the lens itself. As you can see, it goes from f1.4 all the way to f16. A essentially means that you can control the aperture of the lens on the camera body instead of the lens itself. That's just really personal preference to anyone that wants to use it like that. As you can see here, there is a click and declick option, so you can have a clicking sound as you're changing the aperture, or you can have a smooth rotation throughout the range. On the other side, you've got the G label, the G master label, which is there, and underneath you've got a focus hold button, but can also be customized for different settings via the camera menu system. And then you've got an autofocus and manual focus switch. On the front, you have a 67mm filter thread. Not too expensive if you intend to use filters on this compared to some other 35mm lenses that are on the market, but decent size. 67 seems to be a popular filter diameter these days. And underneath here, you've got a rubber gasket, which reinforces the weather resistance of this lens, which is a good option. And of course, you've got like your electronic contacts over there too. With this lens, it also comes supplied with a plastic barrel type lens hood. As you can see, it's not too big, fits on the lens very nice and snug. So very much to no wobble on the lens. But planting this lens on my Sony A7 III, as you can see, it's a decent size, even with the lens hood off. You can see that it's not too front heavy actually, which is great. And you know, it's got a good handling to it. Using it on a crop sensor camera like the A6400, it will turn this lens into a 52.5mm lens, which would make this for a very nice portrait lens, in fact. It can focus as close as 27 centimeters for some decent close-up shots. Just to let you know, the lens lacks stabilization, but Sony can be forgiven for this omission because the f1.4 aperture definitely makes it good for low light already. Now the lens weighs approximately 524 grams, meaning this is a very light lens, but you know, with the added benefit of being small, I was able to attach this on my gimbal to get some nice stabilized footage. The Sony 35mm F1.4 GM produced some incredible images that easily made me think this is the best 35mm lens when it comes down to image quality. It's sharp, there's zero to very little chromatic aberration, the quality of the bokeh is nice and smooth, and that's thanks to the 11 aperture blades. There's also minimal vignetting, and did I mention it's extremely sharp. There's something about this lens that just makes the images look amazing. The color reproduction looks great, and I would have liked to try this lens on an A7R4 because I feel like this lens would really shine. If you do happen to do that, let me know how it performs. The lens looked amazing when it came down to video, but when it came down to focus breathing, that was really my only main concern.
Now, I did do a quick comparison with the Zeiss, and FYI, this is nowhere near scientific, but more of what I just found when I looked at the two side by side. The size physically and obviously is larger and heavier, making this lens a bit more difficult to carry for long periods of time. And as you can see, there are a few differences when you look closely. First, there is a small filter diameter on the GM, which is 67mm, whereas the Zeiss is 72mm. Next, there is no customizable button on the Zeiss, nor is there a focus switch. Weather resistance is where the GM has an upper hand over the Zeiss, and while the two say they are weather resistant in terms of the design, the GM has a rubber gasket and supposedly better sealing, which I can't see unless I take the lens apart. And there is also a fluorine coated front element on the lens too. When it came to autofocus speed for video, the GM did slightly better compared to the Zeiss, but not by a substantial amount. But when it came down to autofocus speed for photos, the GM was much better in nailing the shot. And that can be attributed to the 2XD linear motors in the GM as opposed to a direct drive SSM on the Zeiss. Looking at the type of images that it can produce, I will say the GM can certainly handle chromatic aberration a lot better than the Zeiss. Bokeh, in my opinion, is appealing on the GM compared to the Zeiss, where the Zeiss sort of has that onion ring bokeh effect. And while both do a great job at attaining sharpness in the photos, I will again have to lean this quick comparison to the GM. Again, I will stress this is formed purely on my observations, so you may have a different opinion to mine.
Okay, so the 35mm F1.4 GM, my verdict is that it's probably, if not the best 35mm lens that I've ever played around with. The images are fantastic. The features, design, the weight, the size, just coming in all together makes this a great lens to use. I would definitely, if I had a scoring system, give it a 5 out of 5. It's just such a good lens. And you know, while it's not too big, you know, that doesn't mean that the quality is not great either. Like, I took a look at the Sigma when I played around with it, I think last year or the year before. And while that lens had amazing image quality and an f1.2 aperture, it was just too cumbersome to take around with me. But whereas this one, size, weight, performance, amazing. If anything, the focus breathing was my main issue or concern with it. So if you're a videographer, this might be something to take point of. I did mention that in my first look video, but you know, just to mention it now, that is pretty much the only negative that I found with it, other than the fact that it's going to be expensive, but you do pay a lot for these G Master lenses. But it's not too expensive from what I thought it was going to be. For some reason, I thought Sony were just going to charge like too much for it, but it's really fine. But if you're a person looking for a pretty much the best lens for 35mm focal length, this is probably the one to go with, and this is going to be great for a whole lot of different types of photography. I myself have been using it for a lot of food shots. So if you have any other questions about this lens, please feel free to leave a comment down below, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and like this video, and also hit that notification bell to let you know when I upload new videos, because I will be doing more lens camera reviews coming up shortly as well. Also, don't forget to follow me on social media like Facebook and Instagram for more sample photos and photo updates. And don't forget to take a look in the description down below for more information about this lens, as well as affiliate links that do support the channel. Until then, happy shooting and thanks for watching.